Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back again to the Power of Words podcast. I'm really excited to be here today with a very special person, Nick Santonastasso. Nick, welcome, and so happy to have you. Uh, we're in awe of the work you do, and you stand for all of the pillars of our emotions. And happy to have you on today.
I'm so excited. Even behind the scenes, we'd have some deep, meaningful conversations, and I'm glad we get a longer period of time to give some wisdom and to go deep here. So thanks for having me.
Well, it was, great insight by Ariel Caputo. Of course, I always like to shout out to her when she sees meaningful collaborations. And, collaborations are so important because through that, we can amplify your message, amplify our message, and actually create impact in the world. So tell us a little about you. I'm amazed at how much you have done and what a great role model you are. Our brand is based on role models, so we always look at who can we talk to and how can we inspire others through the work you've done and all of the adversity you've faced in life.
Yeah, for sure. So I can give a quick snapshot and we could dive deep on any which area. But to give the audience context, in 1996, my mother went in for a late ultrasound and they sat them down and they pulled the baby up on the screen and suddenly everybody started freaking out. And from the looks of it, from the ultrasound, it looked like my limbs weren't being developed. A few minutes later after that, they classify me with what they call hand-heart syndrome, which either leaves the babies with undeveloped limbs or undeveloped organs. At the time of my birth, I was the 12th baby they've ever seen this happen to in medical history. And out of the 12, 8 of those babies passed away due to undeveloped organs. And so they gave me about a 30% chance to live. My mom carried forth with the birth. I came out, all my organs were 100% healthy, and the only thing that was affected were my limbs. And so I was born with no legs, a short arm, a left arm with one finger. And from there, the unicorn started tackling this human experience. And there's been so many things that I've done and so many adversities that we can dive into all those different things. But I really found myself when I reached a low point in middle school and high school. We were talking about doing a lot of the work for the youth and how your work is really touching the youth and how getting them more emotionally dialed into their emotions and how to communicate those emotions. Well, I didn't know how to communicate those emotions as a struggling kid. And middle school and high school were the lowest points in my life. And that pain actually pushed me to become an athlete. I became a wrestler, which instilled a lot of confidence in me. Wrestling then led to bodybuilding. Bodybuilding led to starting a speaking company in personal development. And then I spent my whole entire 20s, I'm 28, I spent my whole entire 20s studying the brain, studying human psychology, studying inner child work, studying neuroplasticity. I mean, anything that I could do to help people break out of their own prison that they have inside their brain. And so that was like a snapshot. I know there's so many different ways that we can go, but just to give everybody a snapshot of where I was, where I am now, and why I'm so passionate about this work.
What was it like for you growing up in school?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, I didn't even know I was different until I got into those, probably like fifth or sixth grade, because we're so pure. The world doesn't have a grip on us yet. And I feel like I just thought I was just normal. And then I realized the kids were taller than me. I realized I was in a wheelchair. I realized I got to class a little bit earlier than everyone else. And then I started to pick up on it as I got a little bit older. But for me, I would say, like you mentioned, bullying comes in all forms, all different forms. And for me, I was luckily to have a great set of friends, which I was very supported on. But I think bullying for me more was feeling isolated. I felt like when we got into middle school and high school, friends had girlfriends and boyfriends, and that's where I felt like I was totally neglected and I was totally isolated. I felt like I didn't get the love that other people got love from their significant others or, their boyfriends or girlfriends. They go to their dances and I wouldn't go to my dances. And I actually had a specific moment when I was 13 and I was on a school bus and there was a girl to the left of me and she was making fun of everyone on the school bus. And I was like, oh man, like here it comes. I was used to it. And she looked at me and she looked me in my eyes and said, I don't even have to make fun of you. You're already too messed up anyway. And based on specific
Oh,
experiences, yeah, based on specific experiences, we develop beliefs about who we are and what we're capable of. And so when she told that to me, I'm 13. I don't know how to process it. So I start to believe her that I'm disgusting. I start to believe her that there's something wrong with me. I start to believe that I'll never have a girlfriend. I'll never have a wife. I'll never go to any of these dances. And I realized, and this is what I would say to the younger generation, is I realized way earlier on that my authentic self is actually a human filter. And if I could just stay in authenticity, it's going to filter out the type of the right women and the wrong women, the right kids and the wrong kids, the right friends and the wrong friends. And so it's hard to grasp that, right? At a very, very early age, but your authenticity is your highest vibration. And when you operate at your highest vibration, the universe, whatever you believe in, is going to filter out the right and the wrong. But also, I would say, in addition, which is one of the most powerful concepts, and even adults have trouble, conceptualizing this, is hurt people hurt people. And so
Yeah,
understand that, right?
absolutely.
So understand that
Absolutely.
anytime someone is throwing stones or casting something on you, to have your band, I have my magic on today, but it's like, have empathy, because imagine how, yes, she's got it on, right? Imagine how much that little girl on the bus was struggling, that she had to take it out on a 13-year-old kid with no legs, one arm. She must have been going through something or feeling so insecure or so inadequate, but we don't realize that as kids, but we can if we're exposed to the right tools and the right programs.
It's so hard to explain just what you said in so many ways. And, when we talk about um, kids that you work with, and I know you work with several different underserved communities, struggling communities, what a great message that is, not just from the bullying perspective, but to have that right mindset, how to look at the world have a positive outlook on the world, I think is so important, because we're always looking at the little things, not just in ourselves, but in what's around us, but we're looking for what's wrong in others, as
Mm.
opposed to trying to find what's perfect in others. And part of what we're teaching through the program is reminding us to look at what's perfect. If we believe that we're so good at this, look at what's perfect in someone else and elevate them when they shine. Because when it's your turn to shine, in turn, we hope that through what we're teaching, that people will come together to support each other.
So good. So good. There's actually, it's so cool because this whole conversation about spirituality and emotional intelligence and all this different type of stuff. One of the great mentors or teachers, Wayne Dyer, for me, he shares a concept about turning people into trees. And what he means by that is, like,
I read that.
when we
I
look
read
out
that
in
about
nature,
you. Yeah.
right? When we look out in nature, we love nature, but there's trees out there. We think nature is incredible and it's beautiful and it's majestic and it's magical. And we see trees that are tall, trees that are small, trees that are crooked, trees that are dead, trees that are alive. But when it comes to people, we're so quick to judge them on these little, tiny little things. And so it's like, can you turn people into trees in your day-to-day life?
Absolutely. I mean, that's so beautiful. And congratulations on your book. It's so appropriate, and so appropriate also for some of the communities both of us you already work with, and we're hoping to work with. Um, it's Victim to Victor.
Yes.
I love that. Talk to me about what inspired you to write the book, and when did you actually write it?
Yes.
The
So
book.
I wrote that book in 2018, roughly 2018, 2019. I was just starting my entrepreneurship career. And as I learned more about spirituality, as I learned more about personal development and growth, one of the greatest forces in our life is our identity. And sometimes we get attached to identities. Sometimes we don't expand identities. Sometimes we're attached to an identity that's not so empowering. And I tell my students and the people that I teach, I'm never preaching from a place of perfect. I'm going to be the first one to show you my struggles and the depths of all the darkness in my life. And the truth is, as a 28-year-old man, I've been a victim for 19 years, in the sense of, why do I have to be born like this? Why do I have to be born with no legs and one arm? Why do the kids have to make fun of me? Why don't the girls like me? Like, all these narratives and all these stories that I've built up over the years. And so for 19 years of my life, I hated my body. I was insecure. I didn't like the fact that I had no legs and one arm. I was looking at all the negative lens of it. And I asked myself a better question, right? The brain is a problem solving mechanism, and it's always going to give you an answer to the questions that you ask it. Honestly, most of us had just been programmed to ask bad questions. And if we ask a bad question, we get a bad answer. And so I was so used to, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, especially the youth. I was so used to asking myself, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong? Why don't they like me? And the brain's always going to give you answers, or it'll create answers to prove yourself right. And when I was 19, I said, what's right about no legs and one arm? And the brain didn't like that because the brain was used to the negative. But I was like, what's right about this? And that's when I started with the reframes of like, I'm a unicorn. Okay, like I used to get so upset when people stared at me in public, but then I reframed it and was like, well, if you saw a unicorn, would you stare at the unicorn? I'd stare at the unicorn, especially if he's so handsome like me, right? And I started like building a better story, right? And then I was like, okay, what's great about having no legs of an arm? Wow, this is my body is going to filter out people who are really they really love me and people who don't really like me, and it's going to be very organic and very flowy on who's going to be in my corner, who's not going to be in my corner. And I started building these new stories, but ultimately I built a new identity. Someone that went from victim, the victim mentality, the why me, to the victor, someone who's victorious, has that victorious mindset, and doesn't let the external world dictate their internal state. And so that's what inspired it.
That's so beautifully said. I want to say that you've always stayed upbeat and motivated. And it seems like since a really young age, when did that flip happen for you? When did the switch happen and you realize I've got the confidence to do that? And who is it that was by your side that inspired you? And I'm
Yeah,
wondering, have they stayed on that journey with you?
yeah, that's a great question. So I would just real quickly, I'd back up, give a snapshot of my childhood. My parents, their biggest superpower was they treated me normal. You know, my dad told me as an adult, he's like, son, if I put step stools everywhere and I put little hoops on the drawers and zippers, like you would have got smacked in the face by reality when you moved out of the house. And my dad knew, like my parents knew that they weren't going to be around forever. So how can we keep him in an environment that's going to cultivate him to lean into failure, right? For example, like they would put my clothes in front of me and be like, all right, go for it. And like I would, what do you mean go for it? And they'd be like, try to dress yourself. And they would give me verbal suggestions, but they'd never do the work for me. Or my mom would put me in a high chair with a spoon there and waffles and be like, all right, have fun. And at a very early age, I knew that failure was a friend, it wasn't a foe. Right. And I think our relationship with failure dictates how much action we take or how little action we take. And then the other thing was because they would put challenges in front of me, I was forced to become solution oriented. I was a stubborn, solution oriented little boy who was like, I'm not going to quit until I figure it out. Or, you know, like I fall so many times where I get tired. And so that's, that was some of the mindset cultivation at an early age. But when it came to the personal development, that really broke me out. It was in 2017. I moved from New Jersey to Florida. I was actually pursuing bodybuilding, a guy with no legs, one arm bodybuilding, doing some crazy stuff. And one of my friends, speaking of collaborations, one of my friends, he was like, hey, come to my house. I'm having a meeting with a few like up and coming entrepreneurs. You don't know anyone in Florida. Just come here and meet people. So I went there and I met people, and everybody was sharing their story. And then they looked at me. They're like, what's going on here? And I'm like, all right, I got a long story. And so I started sharing my story. And there was a man to the left of me that I've never met in my life before. And after I was done sharing my story, he looked me in my eyes and said, you're going to be on stage with Tony Robbins one day. And
Wow.
me as a 20-year old kid, I said, who's Tony Robbins? I wasn't exposed to this. I was only bodybuilding. And he said, I know this sounds a little bit crazy, but I got a download from source. I'm going to work for you for free. And if you like the work we do, maybe one day we'll start a company together. And that was 7 years ago. I did 4 years of a world tour at Tony Robbins, and that's Ratmir. And Ratmir is still in my life. We are transitioning to the Middle East together, and he's still in my life. We're still rocking and rolling, and that's my brother.
Wow, congratulations. And I've met Ratmir, and what a powerful partnership you have there for, to just have someone believe in you and say, yes, you've got what it takes. So let me, give you a hand to do this. And I think life is so much about life is finding the right people and being in the right environment, and community is what we call it, which is what we try to build is community.
For sure. For sure. It's like sometimes when you don't have the belief, you need to borrow the belief from your people. And
Yes.
sometimes you cannot see your blessings and your gifts that you have. Sometimes it takes an outside force and an outside human to be like, hey, this is your magic, right? This is your magic. Like there's something there. And sometimes you don't see it because maybe it's just so normal or it's just your essence. But someone acknowledges it, puts spotlight on it, and you're like, wow, maybe I am pretty cool. Maybe I am pretty magical. And so that's why, yeah, community saved my life. And if we can bring more collaboration and more community, I think we can change the world.
Absolutely. And, it is so powerful to be able to come together with people and so, doing so many different diverse things. I couldn't see, I was like, I'd love to collaborate with Nick. I couldn't figure out how can we do this together. And I spoke to you and all of these thoughts came flooding to my mind. And I'm like, yes, we can actually make change together. What are you looking for, and what do you see coming from this relationship? What do you see, what do you think we can do together? But more importantly, what's next for you? What are your aspirations? What are your dreams? And where do you want to be? Because that's what collaboration does as well, is maybe it will be the next step to where you want to be.
Absolutely. And so one of my primary questions is how can I serve today? Right. And I believe that the universe, whatever you believe in, is a mirror for you. And I think most people are like, what can I get today? What can I get today? And for me, I'm like, how can I serve today? And then the universe knows, flips back and says, no, how can I serve you today? And so, anytime when I met you and I felt our energy together in our alignment, I was just like, how can I serve this beautiful soul that is bringing so much good to the world? And so I think within our collaboration is more exposure to the tools, right? The only reason why people are where they are is because they only know what they know. And the law of exposure, once you're exposed, you can never be unexposed. And so all we have to do is just get the tools in front of people. And so I believe that you and I can get the tools, especially the ones that you've created, in front of people. And if they use the tools, so be it. If they don't, at least we know we did our part by exposing them and giving them the roadmap and the tools to take their life to the next level. So I think there's a lot of collaboration and getting tools into different unique places with people that need them, and we can save the world that way. And ultimately, my intention is to not only serve in one way and pigeonhole myself in maybe one identity or one industry, but to realize that as long as I'm serving people, just be my authentic self and change lives that way. Whether that's through music, whether that's through art, whether that's through communication and speaking and videos and funny stuff. It's like, ultimately, Nick, you don't need to just serve in one way. You could just serve in all different ways. And as long as you're helping people, you're helping people. So I've been so attached, and this is my evolution and my awakening, is I've been so attached to just being one way. And I'm like, bro, you can serve in multiple different ways. And so I'm open to the magic. As I transition to the Middle East and to Dubai, my plan is to ultimately elevate the youth, right? See how I could be a role model for the youth and help them with youth programs, help them with mental health and happiness, and then also help them with accessibility. I want more places to be more accessible so people like me can feel comfortable going to new places, falling in love with new culture, meeting new people, seeing new things, and not feeling like there's a big challenge for them to do so. And so those are my latest missions. But ultimately, the core of it is just how can I serve the world as this unicorn vessel that I'm in today.
This beautiful human being that you are today. Nick, we work with a lot of young people, and we've seen the struggle. Some of it has come from COVID, and it's just surfaced so much. I think people are looking for their purpose, and there is so much that needs to be done, and pull them back into believing in themselves. And you are such a force of that message. I know you've been through some really rough times, and you work with families or you work with organizations, whether it's substance abuse or addiction. And that is a big problem that we're struggling with as well with the young generation. Let's talk about, why you went down that path and what made you serve those communities.
Yeah, for sure. So a little over 3 years ago, I got a call. It was on my dad's birthday, and my dad, we were celebrating his birthday. I was in Vegas and he was in New Jersey. And then a few hours later, I got another phone call from my dad, and I picked up and he was hysterical crying. And I was like, Dad, what's going on? He said, Son, I'm at the crime scene. Your brother's dead. He's at my feet. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, he was, his heroin was laced with fentanyl, and he has overdosed a few times, but this time he's not coming back. And my dad was like, can you tell your older sisters? I don't have the strength to do it. Can you call them and let them know their brother's gone? And what's pretty interesting too is that didn't hit me for 6 months. I didn't feel that for 6 months. And the reason being, because even me is like, I was soothing. And we live in a generation where we're not taught to feel it. We're taught to just distract, right? And I always tell my students, in order to heal it, you got to feel it. And if you don't feel it, you'll never heal it. And so that didn't hit me until 6 months later. I'm scrolling on my phone and I see my brother's text messages and I'm like, oh my God, he's gone. And I just broke and I broke and I broke and I felt and I felt and I felt. And later on, I did like more somatic breath and cried over him a bunch and like release. But that's how I got pulled into that industry. I believe that two things. I'm divinely guided and I'm divinely protected. Those are my two mantras. I'm divinely guided, I'm divinely protected. And after my brother passed away, I was speaking at a Tony Robbins, I was on Tony Robbins stage, and I came off the stage and this gentleman had come up to me, looked like me, just had legs, and he was all tattooed up, and he was like, "Hey," he's like, "I'm moved by your story. I'm moved by your brother, and in honor of your brother, I want to bring you into this industry and I want to see how we can serve more people." And that wasn't even on my radar. And so I got brought into that industry. And I feel like that was my brother's blessing that he gave back to the materialistic world, because the work that we're doing and the lives that we're saving, and the financial impact as well. Like he's still in my life, but just not physically. And so that's how I got pulled into alcoholism and substance abuse and addiction and that pandemic and that epidemic going on. And when we look at it, like I mentioned, the root cause are those two things. The first thing is people don't have the tools. Maybe they're caught up in the wrong proximity, the wrong guidance, the wrong mindset. And the second thing is we don't know how to deal with emotions. I always talk about this is like most of our beliefs and our model of the world was cultivated between 0 and 10 when our brain was in theta state. And so, I mean, how many times as a little boy or a little girl have we been told, big boys don't cry, toughen up, or
Yeah.
big girls don't cry, don't show your tears. And then at an early age, you believe emotions are weak, showing them is weak. I don't want to show them, so I'm going to bottle them up, bottle them up. Now I don't know how to feel it, but and the moment I take a substance that makes me feel numb, I want more of it, right? So the root cause is ultimately not knowing how to deal with emotions. So,
Absolutely.
it's right up our alley. And I think it's just like I've been divinely guided to save people in that industry as well.
It's like, shaking up a can of soda. And then eventually when you open it up, it just explodes. Um, it's so true as part of what we do. And just to talk a little bit about the tools and how it's so needed, because this is one way to say, this is how I'm feeling. Either I need compassion today, or I'm reminding myself to be compassionate about the people I'm meeting, but always being open to receiving. And we're so caught up in lives, and we're so caught up in our cell phones and everything that's happening on a minute by minute basis, that we're not actually thinking about people around us, when those are the people that can help support us. So it's so beautiful to be able to build a community of people where they share their emotions, and you're actually able to talk about the little things that we're going through. We think they're little things we're going through on a day-to-day basis. The meeting I'm going to, that might cause me anxiety, and then if it doesn't work out, it causes me a little more anxiety, and that keeps building up. But if I just had someone to share it with, sometimes it's not about the solution, it's really about offloading what you have on your chest and the weight that you're carrying. And that might give you ideas, because then you let all the new stuff come to the surface, instead of just bottling up all your feelings.
100%. Yeah, it's so beautifully said too. And understanding that when you share, you give permission around you to share. You create a safe container, and you show people how to share as well. And also, I'm one of my driving forces is I truly believe pain is passed down the bloodline until someone's ready to feel it. And I was
Yeah.
the one that was ready to feel it.
Wow, Nick, you are such a hero, and I'm so grateful just to have this connection, and for what we might be able to do in the future, not for be able to do, for what we will do together in the future. I'm excited about your move to the Middle East. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. You're going to love Dubai, and I know we will see each other there very soon. I wish you so much luck, and I so look forward to working with you and talking with you and staying in touch. And great job on everything you're doing for every human being.
No, thank you so much. And likewise, giving you your flowers as well. You've created such an incredible curriculum, such a credible program and tools that are going to change lives far many years, even after we're gone. And so your work is going to be eternal, and it's such a blessing to be a part of it.
Well, our work. And thank
Yes,
you.
you're welcome.
Appreciate you. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. Bye
You
now.
got it.